I'm Lydia Harmon, and this is the moment my life split into a before and after. I'm leaving you for your sister. Those words? They weren't whispered in shame or spoken in private. No. My husband of 17 years, Jason, said, them standing at the head of our anniversary dinner table, champagne flute raised, like he was giving a toast. The restaurant was packed with our closest friends and family, people we'd loved, laughed with, built memories alongside, and he chose that moment to destroy everything. For a second, time froze. You know that strange silence that hits right before a car crash? That was the room. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, waiting for the meltdown, the tears, the screaming match they'd gossip about for months. But none of that came. The server froze mid-pour. My sister Vanessa sat 2 seats down, pale as bone, eyes fixed on her plate like it might offer her a way out. I didn't give Jason the satisfaction of a scene. Instead, I reached into my handbag and pulled out a thick manila folder, placing it right on the white linen tablecloth in front of him. Calm, deliberate, controlled. Timing is everything, isn't it? I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me. His smirk faltered. What's this? He asked, suddenly unsure. Open it. And I stood. I smoothed down the midnight blue dress I'd bought for this night, our anniversary, the one I thought would be a celebration. Instead, it became a funeral for the life we'd built. I looked around the table. My gaze met a few stunned faces, some sympathetic, some too shocked to react. Then my eyes landed on Vanessa. She still wouldn't look at me. Her hands trembled in her lap. Please enjoy the rest of your dinner. The bill's been settled, I said quietly. Then to Jason, just one final sentence. I believe you'll find everything in order. And I walked. The sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor echoed through that frozen room. I never looked back. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of papers, then a strangled noise. I don't know if it was a gasp or a curse. Doesn't matter. I didn't stop. The cold night air met me like a wall. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. But once I stepped outside, I could finally exhale. The valet brought my car around, and I slid into the driver's seat like I was slipping into a new version of myself. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked calm. Too calm, maybe. But that's what happens when you've had 3 months to prepare for the moment your world breaks. 3 months since I found the first message from Vanessa on Jason's phone. They thought they were playing chess. What they didn't realize was I had already flipped the board. We met at a home exhibition. I was showcasing my latest interior designs, and Jason, well, he was charming in that easy, confident way that made you feel like the only person in the room. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, actually listened when I spoke. It felt refreshing, especially in a world where men either felt threatened by my success or wanted to take credit for it. Jason didn't seem like either. 2 years later, we were married. Small ceremony, just a few close friends. A mountaintop venue in Boulder, with views that looked like something out of a painting. Vanessa was my maid of honor. She was 7 years younger, always the more spontaneous one. She'd whispered to me as she fixed my veil. You found the perfect one. And at the time, I believed her. The first 10 years were everything I'd hoped for. We built Harmon Interiors together, me with the design vision, him with the business acumen. We made a solid team, bought a beautiful home in the hills, hosted dinner parties, worked side by side, supported each other's dreams. From the outside, we looked like a power couple. From the inside, for a while, we really were. But over time, things started shifting. Jason began staying later at the office. Business trips multiplied. He'd come home tired, distracted, sometimes irritable. When I brought it up, he'd just wave it off. You know how client meetings go, he'd say. Or, I'm just trying to land this new account. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Vanessa moved back to Boulder around then. Her marriage had fallen apart, and she needed a fresh start. Naturally, I welcomed her. She'd always been more than a sister. She was my closest confidant. And when Jason was gone so often, it was comforting to have her around. She helped fill the silence, sometimes too comfortably. Jason and Vanessa became familiar, not in a way that screamed anything at first. Just little things, lingering hugs, shared jokes I wasn't in on, conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. But every time I tried to bring it up, Vanessa would laugh and say, "You're overthinking it. He's just stressed." And Jason? He'd act confused, as if I were imagining things. Still, something in my gut, something deep and cold, started to settle. I brushed it off, kept myself busy, threw myself into projects, convinced myself I was just going through that mid-marriage phase everyone warns you about. Love matures, right? It gets quiet, less fiery. That's normal. But the night I overheard Jason on the phone changed everything. He was in the kitchen. I had just come downstairs for water. He didn't know I was behind the wall. I heard his voice, low and deliberate. "She doesn't suspect anything. Just stick to the plan." That one sentence lodged itself in my chest like ice. I walked back, upstairs without saying a word. Convinced myself he was planning a surprise, a party, a renovation. Anything but what it sounded like. Because the truth would have meant everything I thought I had. My marriage, my family, my business, was a lie. And I wasn't ready to face that. Not yet. The truth finally came to me in the most unexpected way. A careless mistake. One night, Jason was in the shower, and I was curled up on the couch, scrolling through our shared iPad. An alert popped up at the top of the screen. A message. "Miss you already. Can't wait until she's out of the picture." At first, I didn't process it. Then I saw the sender. Vanessa. I sat there frozen, the words staring back at me like a slap across the face. It felt surreal, like maybe I was misreading it. Maybe it was a joke, some misunderstanding, anything but what it actually was. But I knew. Deep down, I'd known for a while. I just hadn't let myself admit it until that moment. That night, after Jason fell asleep, I stepped out onto the back patio and called the one person whose name had come up years ago in a friend's. Messy divorce. Patricia Donovan. Ruthless. Sharp. Absolutely relentless. "Tell me everything," she said. "And from now on, don't delete a single thing." The next morning, I hired a private investigator, Theo Weber. Clean cut, all business, no small talk. I told him I didn't need kindness. I needed results. Gather everything. Patricia had advised. Bank records, texts, phone logs, photos, audio if possible. We're building a case. And so I did. While Jason kissed me goodbye each morning and left for his meetings, Theo followed him. And the truth started arriving in thick envelopes and grim email attachments. The first wave? Photographs. Jason and Vanessa entering a boutique hotel on the south side of town. Same one. Multiple times. Always during my client meetings. Always. When I was distracted. Then came the second wave. Bank statements. Jason had been slowly siphoning money out of our shared business account into a private one. First in small amounts, then bolder. Over $300,000 gone before I even noticed. Patricia laid it out for me in simple terms. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. He's trying to leave you financially stranded. I should have been devastated. And part of me was. But another part? The part of me that had built a company from scratch and survived worse? That part started waking up. I kept digging, kept collecting. kept smiling at Jason across the dinner table while filing away more evidence. But the worst part? It wasn't Vanessa. It wasn't even the money. It was Olivia. Theo found her buried in a folder labeled miscellaneous. A client, young, stylish. The kind of woman Jason used to dismiss as too flashy for our brand. They'd been seeing each other for at least 6 months. The photos made it painfully clear this wasn't professional. This wasn't friendship. It was something else entirely. I remember staring at one of the pictures, Jason laughing, holding Olivia's hand at a rooftop bar, and feeling something inside me go completely still. That was the moment I stopped being hurt. I started getting ready. The final blow came just 2 weeks before our anniversary dinner. Theo uncovered legal paperwork. Jason had tried to transfer our mountain property into his name alone. That house was bought with my inheritance. My family's money. And he almost got away with it. But the clerk flagged the transfer. Missing signatures. Just enough time for me to intervene. Patricia looked at me across her desk that afternoon and said, "You're ready. Let him make the first move. Whatever it is, let him show his hand. Then we strike." I nodded. I had everything. I was prepared. Every photo, every bank statement, every text. They were blades, each one sharpened by betrayal. And yes, they cut. God, they cut deep. But with every slice, I got clearer. Stronger. Each photo was another knife. But it made me stronger. By the time Jason raised that champagne glass and announced he was leaving me, for my sister, no less, every piece had already been set in motion. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cry. I just needed to let the truth do its work. I barely slept that night, but not from grief. I was wired, focused, like everything inside me had snapped into place. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Patricia. "It's done," I told her. "He made his announcement last night." "Perfect," she said. "The paperwork's already been filed. He should be served within the hour." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw him. Jason. Still in the same suit from the night before, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Hair a mess, tie loose, eyes wild. I opened the door but didn't move aside. He looked at me like I was a stranger. "Lydia, we need to talk. This isn't what it looks like." "Which part?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "The affair with my sister. The one with Olivia Winters. Or the money you've been stealing. From our accounts?" He flinched at Olivia's name. "How did you... Does it matter?" "I know everything, Jason. There's nothing left to explain." He pushed past me into the foyer, running his hands through his hair like a man on the edge. "Listen to me," he said, pacing. "Vanessa was a mistake. Olivia didn't mean anything. You and I, 17 years. We built a life together. You can't throw that away." "I didn't," I said. "You did, last night, in front of everyone we know." He shook his head, frantic now. "I was angry. You've been distant. Focused on work. Don't you dare," I snapped. And finally, my voice cracked. "Don't you dare try to make this my fault." The doorbell rang again. Jason froze. Through the glass I saw her, Vanessa, disheveled, mismatched shoes. Hair pulled back in a rush. She looked like she'd dressed in the middle of a panic attack. She walked in without knocking. Her eyes locked on Jason. "You bastard," she said, voice trembling. "Who the hell is Olivia?" Jason turned pale. His mouth opened, then closed. No excuse came. Vanessa shoved her phone in his face. "These photos? You in bed with her? While telling me you loved me? While planning to leave Lydia for me?" "It's not what it looks like," he said again. The irony didn't escape me. Same line. Same lie. Vanessa turned to me then. Her face shifted, guilt, confusion, shame. "You knew?" she asked. I nodded. "About you and Jason?" "Yes." "About Olivia?" Also, yes. The money, the property transfer, the plans you two made to push me out of my own company. I know all of it. She stared at me like I'd just spoken a different language. Then looked at Jason. You told me she was unstable, that she'd be fine once she was out of the business, that we'd buy her out fairly. Jason glanced at me, desperate. She's lying. I didn't say a word. I just walked over to the sideboard and returned with a stack of neatly organized folders. Bank transfers, property records, text transcripts, all highlighted and time-stamped. Vanessa took them with shaking hands. She read one line aloud, voice breaking. Lydia's too provincial, too attached to Boulder. Once she's gone, we can expand Harmon Interiors nationally. She looked up, eyes glossy. You said that was about an investor. Jason stepped toward her. Baby, listen, don't call me that. She recoiled, her fingers flipped, through the photos, each one landing like a punch. 3 weeks ago, she whispered. You told me you were in Denver, meeting suppliers. Jason tried again. It was just physical. She doesn't mean anything. Like I didn't? Vanessa asked. Silence fell between us, thick, heavy. I leaned back against the railing, watching it all unfold. I didn't feel angry anymore, just tired. Jason finally snapped. None of this changes anything. The divorce is happening. The business will be divided. We'll sort it out. I smiled. And that seemed to rattle him more than anything else. Actually, I said quietly, there won't be much for you to divide. His brows furrowed. What are you talking about? As of last week, the contracts are in my name. Clients have been notified. The company you tried to steal? It's already mine. He scoffed. You can't do that. I did. And Patricia made sure it holds up. The morality clause you pushed for in the Westbrook deal works both ways. Right. Then his phone buzzed. He answered without thinking. What? That's impossible. He paused, eyes wide. Check again. He hung up slowly, then turned to me. What did you do to the Aspen project? I tilted my head. Oh, the Thorntons? Apparently they don't appreciate being associated with someone sleeping with Mrs. Thornton's sister. Vanessa looked like she might faint. And Jason? He looked like a man finally realizing the game was over, but I was just getting started. Jason still hadn't fully accepted that it was over. Not just the marriage, but the entire empire he thought he'd built. The illusion he clung to so tightly that he could still control the narrative, that he could charm his way back into the room, was crumbling right in front of him. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just let the facts speak for themselves. The clients? They were already gone. One by one they'd left quietly, citing a shift in values or a need for a fresh start. What they really meant was, they didn't want to be associated with a man exposed for financial misconduct and betrayal. Especially not when the woman he betrayed was the creative force behind everything they'd loved. The Westbrook group pulled out first. That one stung for him. It was our biggest account, years in the making. But once they found out what he'd done, they didn't hesitate. And they didn't just walk away. They transferred their entire contract over to me personally. Said they'd rather work with someone who believed in integrity. Jason didn't know it yet, but most of the deals he thought were still active had already dissolved. The mountain of trust he'd relied on? Gone. And the person who helped tip it all into motion? Gretchen, his assistant. Turns out, she'd noticed the discrepancies months ago during a routine audit, quietly flagged them. When she saw the transfers didn't match our business expenditures, she reached out to Patricia. I don't want to be part of something illegal, she'd said, and I really don't want to be in the room when the walls come down. Smart woman. With her help, Patricia had everything she needed to freeze our accounts, reroute access, and protect the company before Jason could bleed it dry. And once the morality clause kicked in, the very one he insisted we include when we signed with Westbrook. It gave me full legal grounds to dissolve our partnership and retain the clients. He thought he was the brain behind the business. But what he never understood was, without me, there was no business. And Vanessa? She was standing there, watching it all come undone. When I looked at her, I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. I saw someone who had believed the same lies I once did. Someone who thought she was special. Different. You're not in the divorce, I told her quietly. Your name's nowhere on the documents. I didn't drag you into it. She looked surprised. Why not? Because Mom and Dad don't deserve to read about this in the tabloids, I said. And because you'll punish yourself more than I ever could. And she would. I saw it in her face. The betrayal hadn't just cost her me. It had cost her the illusion that she mattered to Jason more than I had. The truth? She didn't. And neither did Olivia. They were just placeholders. When Jason realized the business was gone, that the accounts were frozen, that the clients had moved on, and the doors were closing, he lost it. Accusations, threats, empty promises, but none of it landed. Not anymore. Revenge wasn't rage. It was precision. I didn't scream. I didn't burn anything down. I just took it all back. After everything exploded, the dust settled in the strangest way, quietly. No more dramatic confrontations. No more screaming. Just silence. And in that silence, I found space to breathe again. Jason moved into a one-bedroom apartment downtown. According to his lawyer, he was alone. His accounts were frozen, his business reputation in shambles, and most of the people who used to praise him stopped taking his calls. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. Vanessa packed up and moved back to Phoenix. She didn't say goodbye, not directly. But a few days later, my mother called in tears, saying Vanessa had told her she'd made a terrible mistake. I didn't offer an explanation. Some truths aren't meant to be retold. They're meant to be outgrown. The house was quiet without Jason's routines or Vanessa's drop-ins. At first, that silence was jarring. I wasn't used to being alone with my own thoughts, but slowly I started to enjoy it. I made coffee just for myself in the mornings. I read in bed without distractions. Some nights I'd light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and just sit in the calm. Legally, everything was straightforward, thanks to Patricia's preparation. The settlement was signed, assets divided cleanly, no public drama. Most of our former clients didn't even blink. They stayed with me. Rebranding was the easiest part. Lydia Harmon Designs had always been the heart of the business anyway. Now it just had my name on the door. Therapy helped more than I expected. I didn't walk in angry. I walked in tired, worn down. Not looking for blame, just wanting to understand. Why I'd ignored the signs for so long. Why I'd convinced myself that love meant tolerating silence. That forgiveness meant shrinking. It took time, but I began to feel like myself again. Not the woman I was before the betrayal, but someone newer, wiser, stronger in a quiet, rooted kind of way. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. Vanessa's name. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Lydia. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say I'm sorry. There was a long pause. I let it sit there, let the silence carry the weight it needed to. I'm in therapy, she added, trying to figure out why I did what I did, why I believed him, why I let myself hurt you. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't ready to reopen that door either. Finally, I said, "Why now?" Because Mom wants us together for Christmas. I told her I wouldn't come unless you were okay with it. I took a breath. I can't promise warmth, Vanessa, I said, but I won't block your presence. She whispered, That's more than I deserve. I didn't disagree, but I didn't say it out loud either. When we hung up, I sat quietly at my drafting table, watching the late afternoon light stretch across the floor. Everything looked different in the stillness, and for the first time in a long while, different didn't feel like something to be afraid of. It felt like peace. 6 months after I signed the divorce papers, I opened the doors to my new design studio. It sat in the heart of downtown Boulder, tucked between a cozy cafe and a bookstore I used to visit when I first started out. The space looked nothing like the old one. No more dark wood desks or heavy decor. This place was light, open, airy. It reflected me now, clean lines, natural textures, soft light pouring through wide windows. Everything about it felt intentional. The name on the door read, Lydia Harmon Designs. No and Jason. No shared initials. Just me. I spent the first few weeks pouring myself into projects. Not to distract, but to express. For the first time in a long time, I was designing without compromise. Without having to explain my choices or soften my vision. Clients responded. The Westbrook Group expanded their contract. New partnerships came in through word of mouth. My name was out there. And for once, it was mine alone. I traveled, booked a solo trip to Barcelona. Jason had always refused to go, said he couldn't speak Spanish, said it would be a waste. I sat at cafes by myself, wandered museums with no one rushing me, scribbled design ideas into my notebook while the city hummed around me. I stopped asking permission to be who I was. The healing wasn't loud. It was quiet, subtle. Some mornings it looked like sleeping in without guilt. Some days it meant taking long walks with no destination. Some evenings it meant pouring a glass of wine, lighting a candle, and letting silence feel like comfort instead of loneliness. Then one morning I got an email from Theo, my private investigator. The subject line was simple. Closure. Attached was a photo. Jason, once again, walking out of a hotel. But this time, it wasn't Vanessa. And it wasn't Olivia. It was someone new. I didn't open it. I just stared at the subject line for a moment. And then I hit delete. Not out of denial, but because I meant it when I said I was done with pain. That chapter of my life is closed. Not because the hurt didn't matter, but because I've chosen something better. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after betrayal, if you've ever had to pick up the pieces of a life someone tried to shatter, know this. You are not alone. Your story matters. And if you feel ready, share it. Someone out there might need to hear that healing is possible. That peace is possible. They expected me to fall apart. They expected me to retreat, to disappear, to stay broken. But I didn't. Rebuilt. Not out of spite. Not even out of revenge. I rebuilt because I remembered who I was before they tried to erase me, and I've become someone even stronger since. They expected me to crumble. Instead, I rebuilt an empire. If this story moved you, if you found strength in it, or saw even a piece of yourself in my journey, go ahead and subscribe. There are more stories like this, stories of survival, healing, and quiet strength. And if you've ever been through something similar, I hope you'll stay a while. You're not alone here.